First airing in 2018, Big City Greens has become one of the most popular shows on Disney Channel. The show was well known for its great comedy, fun stories, and heartwarming moments. And of course, you can't forget the lovable residents of Big City. But while they may be enjoyable to watch, where do these characters fall on the morality spectrum? Today, we're going to see which are the cream of the crop and which ones are rotten. Hey guys, I'm Brad with Wicked Binge, and this is Big City Greens, Good to Evil. As usual, we'll be starting with the most pure and noble characters and working our way down. These characters are the good. Taking our gold medal of good is none other than Tilly Green. This shouldn't be a surprise to fans of the show. Out of all the Greens, Tilly is the nicest. Although strange, she's kind, caring, and friendly.
It is always something with your family.
She'll help out those who need her, is a pacifist, and loves animals. Along with Bill, she acts as Cricket's conscience, encouraging him in situations to do the right thing, although she can get caught up in Cricket's schemes too. While she's not nearly as bad as her brother, she's not above mischief occasionally, which we can let slide since she's only 12. Tilly also has her limits when it comes to her patience with her little brother, and can be controlling or willing to do wrong when she thinks it's for the greater good. She tried to force baby birds to love her, and once tried to kidnap a cat, Anoush, from his owner because she thought that Anoush would be happier with her. After she believed her grandmother destroyed her doll, Saxon, Tilly said that she would make her pay and avenge Saxon.
Grandma will pay.
With these lapses in morality, Tilly is still a sweet girl and a character we could easily call one of the most pure characters in this show. In second place is Bill Green. It's no surprise where Tilly gets her goodness from. Bill Green encompasses the typical kind and humble nature when we think of farmers, polite and pleasant towards everyone. Though stern and overly cautious, Bill encourages his kids to follow good values such as honesty and hard work. However, what he values most is without a doubt his family. This is demonstrated when he decided to take a night job at a corporate office and work himself ragged in order to make more money and buy his kids the treats and toys they otherwise wouldn't be able to afford. Though nice, not even he has been honest 100% of the time. He lied to his family about going to the mall food court when in actuality, he had tricked them into getting a family photo taken. And when Bill learned that the kids didn't want him taking them trick-or-treating that year, Bill releases the rabid farm animals and traps the kids in the house, causing them to miss out on candy for most of the night.
Oh, I didn't think it would be this bad.
Thankfully, Bill makes up for both of these actions, even if they were still hypocritical. Most of the time, he's about as honest and as good as they come. We're ranking Ernest Grandpa Green next. Although he passes away before the events of the show, we felt that what we do know about him is enough to give him a high ranking. Ernest was a gentleman, as well as kind and patient in his attempts to court Alice. He was always there to help her, from helping with her car to offering to keep her dry in the rain. And after Alice stole his truck, he still loved her enough to propose and take her last name. When talking about Ernest, Alice says that he was a hero, and that he taught her that it's okay to accept help from people every once in a while. Together, the two work to keep Green Farms going, and it's clear that Ernest's helpful and kind nature were passed down to his son. Though Ernest may be gone, the impact he had on his family can't be ignored. Next, we have two of the Green family's many pets, Phoenix and Dirtbag. Phoenix is the queen of the other farm animals. Despite the regal title, Phoenix never lords her power over the other animals, leading fairly and keeping her subjects safe and happy while also respecting her owner's home, being loyal to her human family.
I will make sure you all remain safe and sound.
As a pet, she's loving, affectionate, and patient. As for Dirtbag, while he's lazier than Phoenix, despite being her second in command, he is loyal. He was able to remind the other farm animals how good they had it when Phoenix was in charge, getting them to properly apologize. Afterwards, he encouraged Phoenix to challenge Cogburn to a rematch, helping her get her fighting spirit back. While they are ultimately minor characters, they're still good pets and deserve a spot on the list. Rich kid Remy Remington is next. Despite his wealthy status, Remy is far from spoiled. Although he was shy at the start of the series due to not having many friends and always being kept busy by extracurriculars, Remy came out of his shell once he became friends with Cricket and Tilly. Though he may question Cricket's methods, he's up for having fun and going on adventures with his friends. While he is stressed and sensitive due to his sheltered life, he's also loyal to Cricket and learns to be more assertive with his parents when their friendship is at stake. Unlike Cricket, who will often come up with plans, Remy's more of a follower, while still having his own skills that the Greens may lack, like when he helped them figure out Chip's plan.
The petition was faked! Not just my name, all of them!
Unfortunately, he can be swayed by bad influences, like when he used subtly manipulated Cricket into helping him get views on Ding Dong, despite the harm it was causing Cricket. Thankfully, Remy was able to snap out of it. Though some would say he's more passive, Remy has never been shown to be malicious, and we can appreciate him for being more thoughtful and not as mischievous as Cricket. Next, we have Brett. Brett is one of the Greens' neighbors and is easily the kindest. Known for being laid back, Brett is never bothered or annoyed by the Greens or their shenanigans. In fact, he's supportive of them. Like when he learned Tilly was going to enter her goat in a dog show.
That's awesome! I bet you win the whole thing.
He invites the Greens over to his apartment complex, whether it's to enjoy Halloween with other residents or having fun in their apartment pool. While he may not be the neatest, just look at his apartment, that's the only real flaw Brett has. We can't rank him any higher because he has a minor role. But in terms of overly friendly neighbors, Brett is one of the best. Up next is Vasquez, Remy's loyal bodyguard. Wherever Remy goes, Vasquez is always close by. As a bodyguard, he'll protect Remy and keep him out of danger.
It's my duty to protect you.
It doesn't matter who you are, if you're gonna hurt his master Remy, Vasquez will absolutely take you down. We've seen in some instances that not even Cricket is an exception to this, despite being Remy's best friend. If you saw the episode Winter Greens, you can see this guy is intense. Other episodes hint at him having a possible dark side. Despite him seeming stoic, Vasquez doesn't see Remy as an assignment or a job. He cares for Remy, seeing him as part of his family, and enjoys spending time with him or doing activities like trick-or-treating. He'll help or comfort Remy whenever Remy's stressed out. And in the previously mentioned Winter Greens, he was apologetic when he realized how far he had taken their snowball fight and how much he had upset Remy. Though he may seem intimidating, he's more than just a bodyguard. Gloria has come a long way since her first appearance. She was a stressed-out barista who refused to deal with Cricket's antics. She was harsh, grumpy, and no fun. She also had a temper, though we can't blame her given how much Cricket's game of Critterball was stressing her out.
You're a horrible, horrible little boy.
However, after Cricket makes up for nearly getting her fired and starts helping Gloria, she starts to warm up to him and his family. In several instances, the two of them are even able to team up and work together. Though they still bicker, once Gloria is able to open up about the things that make her upset or stressed, Cricket is able to understand her better, and the two are able to get along. By the time Chippocalypse comes around, Gloria has formed such a strong bond with the Greens that she's willing to lose her job at Wholesome Foods in order to help them. Although she can make mistakes or be selfish, she's someone who's trying her best to keep up with her not-so-easy life in the big city. At the edge of good, we have Gabriella, Cricket's girlfriend. Gabriella started off as a friendly and pretty girl who Cricket reluctantly had a crush on. She was patient with him, even when Cricket started acting weird. And although she didn't wait to share a dance with him at the Valentine's dance, she was still polite when she rejected him and told him that she wasn't romantically interested in anyone at the time.
Dude, I don't love you. I don't even know your name.
Things shifted with her second appearance, where she and Cricket actually had a lot in common, adding spice to her sweet personality. As it turns out, Gabriella enjoys playing pranks as much as Cricket does, and isn't afraid to be a troublemaker. This was further demonstrated during their first date, where she and Cricket disrupted the other couples at the 360 restaurant, more interested in having fun instead of doing anything romantic. Though mischievous, Gabriella is still kind and doesn't cause nearly as much trouble as Cricket does, so she barely squeezes in to the good tier. That's it for the good characters. Now it's time to descend into neutral territory. This is the gray area. First, we have Nancy Green. Nancy was a surprise when she was introduced towards the latter half of season 1, after being in jail for several years. You don't see too many Disney parents with a criminal record. Along with having committed the crime of setting dairy farm cows free as a way to both rebel against the factory farm and help the cows, Nancy was also at one point part of a bike gang called the Stingers and encourages her kids' own rebellious sides.
Let's go get our mom night back.
While someone like Bill may scold Cricket for its pranks, Nancy may find them just as funny as her son does and goes along with the schemes. Despite being more rebellious than her ex-husband, Nancy acknowledges her flaws, understanding how they can be a bad influence on her children. As a mother, she's protective of Cricket and Tilly, trying to be better for them. And even when she enjoys being the fun parent, there are times where she forces herself to discipline her kids, like when she saw how Cricket was nearly hurt due to his beach day prank. We can't ignore her faults or some of her actions, but with how hard she tries to be better, we feel Nancy fits best in the upper half of the gray tier. Officer Keyes is next. Just by looking at him, you can tell that he falls into the role that a lot of animated cops do. He may try to do his job more than someone like Chief Wiggum, but he's still incompetent.
Don't quote me on this, but I believe murder is illegal!
While he'll go out of his way to stop crime and do his job, he'll be lenient on someone or make things worse for the family. Although the Greens cause a lot of trouble, he's not completely at fault whenever he tries to arrest or find them when he's just doing his job. He's been fooled by people like Chip Whistler, and he refuses to help the Greens find a missing Cricket because he believes finding Zillion Brax is more important since Zillion is a celebrity. He's also strange. He's nice, but he's also a goofball. When he did manage to get serious, he was intimidating.
Confess! We know the lolly's yours! Don't play dumb!
Though he's well-meaning but not too bright, Keyes has had awesome and heroic moments in the series, like when he takes Cricket and Remy home before they die from a heat stroke, and when he decides to free Nancy and take her to the mayor's house so they can save the Greens' house before it's too late, even telling Nancy that she and her family are his favorite people to police. Even with his mistakes, we feel he still deserves a bit of credit for the successes he's had, as well as a nice cop he usually tries to be. Next is Community Sue. As her name suggests, she's in charge of the big city community center and takes her job seriously. She's more of a drill sergeant than a coach.
Are you willing to get your hands dirty?
Since she screams all of her lines. She's an authority figure, but while she may seem harsh, she has her moments of kindness. After all, she's in charge of a place that gives kids a place to play sports and have fun. So of course, a person like that isn't going to be all bad. In her debut episode, she spent the afternoon training with Tilly after Tilly let her know how much she wanted to earn a trophy. Sue encourages Tilly's competitiveness, works to train her, and even gives her a trophy once she's deemed that Tilly has earned one, respecting Tilly's choice to win by wearing her opponent out instead of punching them. After being frustrated with Cricket, Sue took the time to point out Gabrielle's feelings to Cricket, which in turn gave Cricket the courage to confess his own feelings. It just goes to show how much he cares about the kids of the city. We finally come to Cricket Green, and boy do we have a lot to say about him. Cricket is mischievous, reckless, stubborn, and impulsive, but he's also happy-go-lucky and hyperactive with a lot of determination. Whenever Cricket pulls pranks, he's more interested in having a good laugh than trying to hurt or upset someone. In fact, when he does upset someone, namely Remy or one of his family members, he'll make it up to them. Unfortunately, it can take him a few episodes to learn his lesson, and though he's had some growth, he has a long way to go in terms of maturity.
Hey, I'm a good influence.
This kid has made some big mistakes, from selling fake produce to make a quick buck, to wrecking the big city Christmas tree and getting Tilly put on the naughty list with him. Although he can be a wild child towards his family, a frustrating little brother to his sister, and a nuisance to the city, Cricket has also been protective to both friends and family, and has sacrificed his own happiness in order to help someone he cares about. He even took on a job at Big Coffee, despite hating doing things like cleaning and working, just so Gloria wouldn't be fired from the job she desperately needed. While he has a lot of faults and causes a lot of trouble for others, at the end of the day, he has a good heart, coming off more as a lovable scamp than a total brat. Just under Cricket is Alice Grandma Green. Alice is a spitfire, and she doesn't let anyone forget it. She's loud, abrasive, and hostile, even towards her own family. She frequently shouts at her son and puts pressure on him, like when Bill was younger and wanted to do gymnastics, or when he threatened to disown him if he told a boring story. This later extended to Cricket, when she emotionally disowned him after he was unable to complete their family tradition and earn his place in the family.
What'd I tell you about using your imagination?
She can also be proud, refusing to ask for help and always wanting to do things her way. She'll look down on Nancy for being a convicted criminal, even though Alice has indulged in plenty of arrest-worthy acts, like stealing, destroying property, and assaulting people. So you can add hypocrite to the list. What keeps her from being put into the bad tier is the love she has for her family. Like Cricket, she's protective of the people she cares about. Although she has to force herself to do it, she's willing to apologize and acknowledge her mistakes. We also saw in a flashback that she was willing to sell off some of her farmland in order to spend more time with Bill and less time on the crops. Though it may often be classified as tough love, Alice is far from heartless. Next, we have Gwendolyn Zapp, the crazy tech genius of Big City. Gwendolyn is eccentric in her efforts to create technology that can improve the lives of the city's citizens. She gets so caught up in the tech that she can forget about the ethics involved in inventing. Unlike Chip Whistler, she has no ulterior motive for her business other than helping people. It's just that she can take this help too far. The biggest example of this was when she insisted on relieving the Green family of all their perceived flaws. Something that can be seen as helpful, but only on a theoretical level.
You're flawed too!
In practice, it's horrifying, especially with how forceful she was about it, seeing it as a kind and helpful gesture. This is the only time that Gwendolyn was ever antagonistic, so we can't put her any lower. In a way, she can be compared to someone like Willy Wonka, kind and friendly on the outside with a goal to make people happy, but more crazy in a way that makes you concerned about the type of tech she could create if she ever decided to go all in on the innovation side of her business. Reaching the end of our grades here, we have Miss Cho, Gloria and Cricket's boss from Big Coffee. Miss Cho is your typical boss. She's grumpy and rarely ever speaks. Unlike someone like Community Sue or Alice, who may have softer sides that help with their rough exteriors, Miss Cho doesn't have that soft side. She's stern with her workers and no nonsense, always expecting her employees to work hard and not taking too kindly to mistakes. She's at least fair, like how she was willing to allow Cricket to work off a debt in exchange for not firing Gloria. What puts her down this low is her brief moment of selfishness, when she accepts Chip's deal to buy Big Coffee, not giving a second thought to how her employees would fare afterwards, and instead choosing to take the money for herself and retire. She may not be the worst boss ever, but the way she left the show definitely left us with a bad last impression.
Peace out, my dudes.
Finally, we've come to the Krabby, the Crooks, and the Crazies of Big City. These characters are the bad to evil. Starting off this section is Mr. Gregorian, another one of the Green family's neighbors. He's the opposite of Brett, often grumpy and yelling at people, namely the Greens, who annoy him. While you could argue that he has a reason to do this, given that Alice often yells at him until he once tried to steal his pet, it also seems like grumpy and rude is his default.
You stay away from here.
Thankfully, that grumpiness is his biggest flaw, which compared to some of the other characters in this tier is good. Mr. Gregorian also has a soft side when it comes to his cat, Anoush. While he was angry at Anoush for spending time with Tilly, he never yelled at Anoush and always treated him kindly, which Anoush acknowledges given that he was reluctant to leave his owner despite wanting to also spend time with Tilly. Speaking of which, despite all his hatred towards her grandmother, Mr. Gregorian let Tilly and Anoush be friends in the end.
I'll take down the catio fence so you can visit little girl.
Who says grumpy old guys can't be good neighbors every once in a while? Next is the Cyber Knights. They're a trio of bullies in Big City, known for hacking into electronic devices and forcing everyone to bow down to them. They steal digital money from a fellow kid's game account and even erase all their save data, losing all of their progress. This may seem insignificant, but to a kid or even just a gamer like myself, this can be devastating. Just the way these kids are so callous in how they threaten others and ruin games is enough to make you cringe. While they are a more active antagonist than Mr. Gregorian, given that they steal and cause trouble, they aren't much of a threat outside of the digital world, and they are just kids, so we can't really rank them any lower. Manager Louise from the Thanksgiving special is next on our list. Being forced to work on a holiday is never fun, and as far as Louis is concerned, if he can't have a good holiday, then no one can. As the manager of Price Busters, he holds insane sales over Thanksgiving weekend. Once he's made his sales known, he sits back and watches the citizens of Big City tear each other apart as they try to save a few bucks. Louis doesn't just see it as a means of revenge, he also sees it as entertaining and hilarious.
Look at that chaos! I love it!
And that's messed up. Thankfully, after being defeated and invited to enjoy a Thanksgiving dinner with the Greens, he puts his anger and pettiness aside to enjoy the one thing he wanted, a relaxing and happy holiday meal. We don't see Louis again, so we don't know if he made a true turnaround after this incident, but this one episode was enough to put him in the bad tier, even if we sympathize with him. Just a little. Up next is Amaryllis. Fun fact, did you know that Amaryllis is a type of flower associated with death in floral language? Alright, so that should clue you in on what this girl's about. Another one-shot villain, Amaryllis is a Zillion Brax fangirl who takes creepiness to the next level. She's obsessed with her celebrity crush, to the point where she was willing to kidnap him and keep him as a duet singing partner in her shrine. Even though she starts off friendly, the moment she gets her hands on Zillion, aka Cricket in disguise, she treats him like her property and threatens him as she forces him to sing with her.
We're gonna sing forever.
She may only be a kid, but kidnapping and holding someone hostage is nothing to sneeze at. Cricket was in danger, and perhaps we should be thankful that Amaryllis has only gotten one opportunity to show what she's capable of. Entering our top 3, we have the local thieves, Bash and Bella, possibly the most lovey-dovey couple in Big City. It's too bad that most of their dates consist of robbing banks and jewelry stores. Ignoring that they're a reference to Pokemon's Team Rocket, these two make for a decent threat. They use Alice as their getaway driver, bribing her with 5-star ratings on her driving. When Bill became aware of what was going on and exposed them as criminals, they drove off with Bill in the car in an attempt to escape, destroying city property and breaking Officer Key's foot along the way.
Well, gosh, I'd love to, but my driving foot has a flat.
With a criminal record like that and no sign of slowing down, it only makes sense that they'd be this far down. In second place, we have Cogburn the Rooster. Though he may not be as dangerous as a thief or a kidnapper, Cogburn is without a doubt the meanest animal in the Green family backyard. Bill even refers to him as the mean rooster. In contrast to someone like Phoenix, Cogburn is selfish and only wants power as a means of getting what he really wants: pie. Once he becomes leader of the farm, he's both manipulative and cruel towards the other animals, not caring about their needs or concerns, and instead forcing them to bake pies for him.
Oh, you've made your king very happy.
He isn't too nice towards his owners either, given that he once tried to sabotage the annual Green family harvest dinner by, what else, stealing the pie they were going to have for dessert. Even after Cricket and Alice get it back from him, it's implied that he's gonna get revenge on them somehow. Throw in that he's voiced by Alfred Molina, and you've got yourself a pretty memorable villain. Taking our gold medal of evil, we of course had to go with Chip Whistler. We don't think anyone would argue Chip's status as the big bad of the series. Even before he started spiraling down a road of villainy, Chip was an all-around jerk. Although he was willing to make a deal with the Greens and do business with them, he also looked down on them. Once he chipped his tooth on one of their fake pieces of produce, Chip officially became the Greens' biggest enemy, despite Cricket trying to warn him about the fake. Having a huge ego means that Chip is unwilling to humble himself or admit his mistakes, leading him to become more and more evil and unhinged as the series goes on.
I'm done playing.
Some of his most noteworthy crimes are beating Cricket with tomatoes during their produce war, even after Cricket had surrendered, trying to ruin the Green family business, faking a petition from the citizens of Big City as a means to destroy the Greens' home, and trying to kill Cricket and the rest of his family with a helicopter. By the time we get to Chippocalypse, Chip goes from your average businessman villain to a madman and attempted murderer, and all because he chipped his tooth. Alright, that's the list. What do you think? Let us know in the comments if you agree with our ranking, and tell us which series you'd like to see next. Be sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss new episodes of Good to Evil, featuring your favorite cartoons and video games. But most importantly, stay wicked.